The sun shimmered across the calm lake like molten gold, its surface broken only by the ripples from my nephew's laughter. It was one of those rare weekends where the world finally slowed down. My family, my friends, and the sound of water lapping against the dock I'd built with my own two hands. But peace never lasts long when you live near an HOA, especially when Karen is on the board. It all started that Saturday morning. I'd invited a few close friends and my brother's family to spend the weekend at my lake house, fishing, grilling, and making memories. The property had been in my family for generations, long before the HOA was even formed. The land, the dock, and a good portion of the lakefront were all part of my deed. But that didn't stop Karen, the self-appointed sheriff of the subdivision, from believing everything within sight of her nose belonged to the HOA. Around noon, I was on the deck flipping burgers when I heard shouting by the water. My niece ran up, wide-eyed. "Uncle Ryan," she said, breathless, "there's a lady yelling at the guests." I sighed, because I already knew who. Karen stood at the edge of my dock in her oversized sun hat, arms crossed like a traffic warden of righteousness. She was surrounded by my friends, who were trying, politely, to explain that they were my guests. Karen didn't care. She was on one of her authority trips. "You can't have guests out here," she barked. "This lake is for HOA residents only. Your guests are trespassing." I wiped my hands on a towel and walked down to the dock, keeping my temper in check. "Karen, these are my friends," I said calmly. "They're here with my permission. You're on my property." Her nostrils flared. "That's impossible. This is community lakefront property. I'm on the HOA board. I know what the rules are." Her confidence would have been funny if it wasn't so obnoxious. I pulled my phone from my pocket, opened a file, and handed it to her. "You see that line?" I pointed to the survey map. "That's the boundary of my property. This entire stretch of the lakefront, including this dock and 30 feet of the water, belongs to me." She blinked, her face paling slightly. "That can't be right. The lake is shared by everyone." I gave her a slow smile. "Not this section. This part's a natural inlet, private land. Been in my family since 1968. The HOA doesn't own a single square foot of it." The silence that followed was glorious. Karen froze, her mouth half open, like a computer trying to reboot after a bad update. When she found her words again, her tone changed from aggressive to defensive. "Well, even if that's true, your guests are disturbing the peace. They're making too much noise." I turned toward the water, where my niece was quietly skipping stones with her cousins, and my friends were chatting softly by the dock. The only sound was the gentle hum of laughter and the occasional splash of a fish. "That's funny," I said. "Because the only disturbance I hear is you." Karen puffed up again, clearly not used to being challenged. "I'll be reporting this to the HOA board," she snapped. I nodded. "You do that. But you might want to read the bylaws again before you waste their time. Section 3A. HOA authority doesn't extend to private, non-common areas. You're trespassing right now." That word, trespassing, hit her like cold water. She looked around, realizing she was standing on my dock without permission. For a moment, I thought she might actually apologize, but instead she muttered something under her breath and stormed off, heels clacking on the wooden boards. My friends burst out laughing once she was gone, and I just shook my head. I'd dealt with her kind before, people who think control gives them purpose. But I had no idea that this wouldn't be the last time she'd try something. 2 weeks later, I got a letter from the HOA. Karen had filed a complaint, claiming I was operating a commercial property by hosting public gatherings at my lake house. According to her, the noise, the guests, and the traffic violated community regulations. It would have been annoying if it wasn't so ridiculous. So I decided to play it smart. I gathered every piece of documentation I had, property surveys, historical records, and even an old newspaper article showing the land's private ownership going back half a century. Then, I requested to speak at the next HOA meeting. The room was full when I arrived, neighbors whispering, Karen sitting smugly near the front, probably expecting me to back down. But when I laid out the paperwork and explained how the HOA's jurisdiction ended 200 feet before my lakefront, the room went quiet. According to county records, I said, tapping the map on the screen, this property and the adjoining section of lake are deeded to me exclusively. That means the HOA has no legal standing to issue citations, fines, or complaints against activities on this land. And since your board member, I gestured to Karen, has repeatedly trespassed and harassed my guests, I'll be forwarding this documentation to my attorney. Karen's smugness melted into panic. The HOA president glanced at her, visibly irritated. Karen, were you aware of this? She fumbled with her papers, avoiding eye contact. I thought it was shared property. Well, it's not, I said plainly. So from now on, if anyone from the HOA steps onto my property without permission, I'll treat it as trespassing. I hope we can all respect boundaries, both legal and personal. The board apologized to me right there. They dismissed the complaint and added a note to their records clarifying that my land was private. Karen didn't say another word. She just sat there, fuming, her authority shattered. When I got home that night, the lake was quiet again, still, peaceful, like it was before. My guests came back the next weekend, and this time, there were no interruptions. Karen stayed far away, probably too embarrassed to face anyone. I stood on the dock watching the sunset reflect off the water, thinking about how people like her operate. They cling to control because they fear losing relevance. But peace doesn't come from power, it comes from knowing your worth and standing your ground. As my niece tugged my sleeve and asked, Uncle Ryan, is the lake ours again? I smiled. It always was, I said. We just had to remind them. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, the laughter returned, free, unbothered, and completely ours. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't shouting louder, it's owning the silence that follows when the truth speaks for you.